Well, once again, good morning, everybody. Had a comment on the video that I did this morning, and Delaware Chow. I take that means goodbye, Delaware. I presume Delaware is a place in America. I'm sure I've heard of that. So anyway, Delaware goodbye or Delaware Chow. I'll read what they've written, because, as I say, I find this quite interesting. A lot of it rings true with thoughts that I've had as well. Let's be honest, making a murderer's central theme has always been Manitowoc County and Wisconsin versus Stephen Avery. What happened to Teresa has always been secondary. What happened to Brendan has always been secondary. Hell, it's most commonly called the Stephen Avery case. I've hardly ever heard people call it the Teresa Halbach case, or even the Brendan Dassey case for that matter. I've certainly referred to it as the Teresa Halbach disappearance. I know that, for example, Eric Jose, what angered him most about making a murder was what was happening with Brendan. But yes, Stephen Avery is undoubtedly the main figure in all of this. It's because of Stephen Avery that there was a Making a Murderer documentary series. Okay, so can people stop kidding themselves already? The top priority for truthers is to see Stephen Avery and then Brendan Dassey get out in that particular order. Well, I would say that at one time it was very much a case of once Duffin had decided in Brendan's favour that we would hopefully see Brendan get released, and once Brendan is released, that would help see Steve getting released. But yes, I'm also of the opinion that Steve is going to be the first one to be released, closely followed by Brendan. Question is, will we get to who actually killed Teresa, which would be good to know. Carrying on, finding the real killers of Teresa is merely a convenient afterthought. Not too sure about it being an afterthought. I think it's very much in people's minds. It's very much in Kathleen Zellner's minds. I think sometimes, support for Steve can come across as being a single-minded support for Steve. But I think most people are of the opinion that, they want to see justice for Steve, Brendan and Teresa. Carrying on, some of us are even openly critical about the victim's family, meaning truthers. Some of us truthers are openly critical about the victim's family, which is quite shameful if I'm being honest. I would have to say that with respect to Mike Halbach, he knows what's happened. He doesn't use the term grieving process while she's only a missing person. What was happening, as Mark pointed out yesterday, what was happening in the days when Tuesday, Wednesday, when Teresa never appeared, no car there, what was happening then? Where were all these people that she would have had appointments with? There is suspicion there, I'm afraid, and until we get answers, particularly, as I say, from Mike Halbach as to why he was grieving. The grieving process could last days, weeks, months. It could last days. I just don't get that comment at all. And I don't see that as just a sort of a slip of the tongue. Anyway, the filmmakers saw a lucrative opportunity for creating intriguing entertainment, since this guy, who was wrongly convicted once, was back in jail again. I always thought, I must admit, I've always thought that the Laura and Moira were pretty fair in their making of the documentary. I think they were always showing the what the prosecution side of things. A true crime documentary plot doesn't get much better than that. Well, yes, absolutely. I think Stephen's case is totally unique. But then he goes on. Guilty or innocent, Stephen Avery is hardly the model citizen. And I think it is important to remember that of the 18 years that he did wrongfully convicted, in fact, the first 6 were actually, also he did get sentenced for 6 years for running Sandy Morris off the road. Now, whether that was disproportionate or not, I don't know. I believe sentences in America are generally very harsh, so he was going to be facing 6 years for that anyway. But of course, he would have openly admitted to have done that, so maybe he would have got off sooner. And we don't know. We simply don't know what his plans were with Sandy Morris when he pointed a gun at her and was wanting her to get into his car, and all that stopped going any further was the fact that Sandra Morris pointed out, well, no, I can't go with you. My child's in the car, in my car. So hardly the model citizen. He'd certainly not been that, had he? Okay, and it's a shame he holds the celebrity status that he does. Anyone who tortures and kills animals, he threw a cat, singular, but anyway, let alone their own pet, for which they are supposed to play the role of a parent purely for sadistic pleasure, as opposed to doing it for food, self-protection, or even clothing, is not a good human being. I suppose what we'd have to think about there is, do people have the capacity to change? Michael Vick was disgraced for the same reasons. Michael Vick, I'm sure that was a quarterback, despite being an actual celebrity based on sporting merit. I'm a truther, and I can't wait to see Brendan Dassey get out of jail, who I believe is innocent and was unfortunate to get caught up in all of this. I couldn't care less where his uncle ends up. There was quite a few comments on this. Thank you, Darcy. I don't need my hand licked as I'm trying to scroll down. So let's scroll down a bit and see. I'm going to put you down in a minute, actually, because you're starting to fidget about too much. My sort of brief response at the time, because I was getting ready for a lesson, was simply that I think that Manitrock County Sheriff's Office have created an unwelcome hero by making Stephen Avery the patron saint of wrongful convictions. Certainly they didn't intend to. And yes, that obviously would never have happened but for Laura and Moira making the documentary. Also, I think that if Steve hadn't have been so stubborn in not admitting to the 85, I suspect that Kusurik and the rest of them at the Sheriff's Department thought that he would just admit to the 85 assault in order to be let out early because of the strain. We hear a lot about the strain that was put on him, being shifted to various prisons, seeing actual murderers being released when he's totally innocent, but he was never gonna give in. And if he had to have done the 32 years, he would have done the 32 years. But as I say, I'm pretty sure that the Sheriff's Department thought that, by showing Steve how they can convict him of a really serious assault and really mess up his life, that he would have simply said, "Oh well, I've had enough of this messing about. I'm just gonna behave myself and try and be, as I say, better behaved and definitely off of the radar of the Sheriff's Department if they're capable of doing what they did to me in 85." However, what I would point out is this, that, you know, Manitrot County Sheriff's Department have been found out twice, and they should face some serious consequences. Because for me, if you balance what happened with Sandra Morris, the cat incident, that completely pales compared to what the Sheriff's Department did to him in '85, and then what they've done this time round, where, as I say, I would not be at all surprised if Teresa Halbach was basically assassinated in order to create this wrongful conviction of Steve. They had 2 years to plan it from the moment that Steve was out. Whether or not somebody in the Sheriff's Department pulled the trigger, you know, I don't know, but let's not kid ourselves. It's because of the fact that Stephen Avery was looking like he was very much going to win his case. I don't think there's any doubt that that is the reason why Teresa disappeared. And if somebody did it simply in order to get at Steve, they knew exactly how the Sheriff's Department were going to look at it. And as I say, that, you know, they've basically tried to bury Stephen Avery alive, and basically his nephew as well, because remember, Brendan would only be eligible for parole in 2048, when he's like 58 years old. He'll only be eligible if he admits to it. You know, if he's as stubborn as Steve and doesn't admit to it, you know, the plan is for him to stay in for the rest of his life as well. As I say, I do get the fact that, you know, it's a touchy subject for some people, because, as I say, they balance what Stephen did as a youngster up until the age of 22, when he got into trouble, with what the Sheriff's Department have sort of retaliated with. I certainly think that Delaware is, as you say, a truther, and very much want to see Brendan out. You want to see the truth for Teresa, and that will result in Stephen getting out. And we'll just have to wait and see once he's out if he can ever live up to the tag of Patron Saint of wrongful convictions, and hopefully do some good. Certainly when he was let out in 2003, between 2003 and 2005, we don't know exactly what he was like. There's some people suggesting that, you know, the 18 years, he talks about the fact that he left his anger at the jail gates. You wonder about that. All I can go with is the fact that, as I've spoken to him many a time now since he started visiting Steve, Mark Hoddenett, he's been to see the guy. Mark doesn't obviously have the benefit of knowing Steve from way back, but based on how he is now, it would seem that that Steve has become a reasonably calm individual. Although again, you know, we still get every now and again some of his letters that he's sent to various people being disclosed, which I suppose is unfortunate, because we don't know how we would be if we were in his position. Anyway, what I would suggest is, please, that we keep obviously these sort of debates very respectful, and show the other side that, you know, we can have diversity of opinion, and we can respect each other's opinions, and keep posting our opinions and discuss these sort of things. I think that's definitely something that will be good. And as I say, at the end of it, if some good comes of this Stephen Brendan eventually being let out, and the real killer of Teresa being found. As I say, for me, that the sheriff's